Hey, thanks everyone for coming and Firestorm for having me. So this workshop is on digital security culture, and a large part of digital security culture is just good security culture in general. You can have the best technology and still get into trouble and expose things you don't want if you don't use things correctly. On the other hand, you could have little or no technological background and just by adopting good practices be much safer and better off. I also want to say that I don't condone illegal activities. I'm not, this is not a how to do illegal things. There are situations described here for historical purposes, and yeah, so we'll just go ahead and get started with why we practice security culture. So having a good security culture practice will save everyone the trouble of having to work out safety measures from scratch. If we have a set of standards as a community that we adhere to, then we don't have to wait until something goes wrong to respond to it. We can act in ways where hopefully things don't go wrong. It also helps offset paranoia and panic in stressful situations, because when people do get arrested and do get charged, there's always a question of how far will this go? Is this just the one person, or are there going to be more people in this person's circle implicated? And having good security culture can help with that. It also allows us to collaborate with strangers without having to agonize whether they are or not informers. It's very common for activist movements to be infiltrated by different levels of state actors. And also, more commonly these days, also alt-right actors. So if we have good security culture, that means we don't stop because we're paranoid. That means people can continue to act, continue to do things and have influence. They just keep themselves safe while at the same time welcoming new people. So security culture, what is it? It's a set of customs shared by a community to minimize risk. So a good security culture should preserve as much secrecy as necessary for individuals to be safe, but it should also provide visibility for radical perspectives. If a movement disappears underground and only operates in private, there's no way for new people who are interested to get involved. There's also no way to engage with the media if people feel like that's necessary. There's no way of shaping that public narrative. But if a movement is entirely in the public, then there's also that risk of the individuals involved and doing actions being implicated and charged. So security culture is a way of finding a balance between the two. So yeah, the balance between a need to escape detection from your enemies and the need to be accessible for potential friends. A large part of this is people shouldn't know things that they don't need to know. There's this natural human curiosity where you hear something's going on, you're on the periphery, and you want to know more about it. But at times that can be dangerous to yourself and others. So I think an understanding of only knowing to your involvement helps a lot. It's not a means of excluding people based on social capital. And being new to a movement or a scene, it can often feel like this, where, say, I'm new, I don't know the right people. I feel like I'm not being told things because I'm not cool enough, when actually I'm not being told things to keep me safe. And that's kind of important to remember. And on the other hand, you shouldn't assume that you should get to know information just for showing up, just for being involved. Sometimes it's better for your sake and those around you to not to know the information. So don't ask people to share information. And if you ask people and they say, well, I can't share it, or pretend not to know, don't push. Don't brag about illegal things you've done, other people have done. Don't mention things that are going to happen, could happen. Don't implicate other people and say that they're involved with activities. This includes putting the word allegedly in front of something. You can't say so-and-so allegedly broke a window, so-and-so is going to allegedly, I don't know, burn down the Biltmore. Those sorts of things will implicate people and be starting places for investigations. Don't photograph people or post pictures without their consent. This is a biggie. Police will use the pictures taken at protest to see who was there after the fact. And we'll get into this later about how the police themselves are filming protests and events, building a list of people and identities, trying to tie those to real people. Don't help do their job for them by photographing. I understand there is a need for news, for media, for a public face, and that can be figured out with people's consent. You can ask people before taking the picture. You can try to find a public way of showing it. Don't speculate about who carried an action in person, but especially on social media. Social media is a permanent public record of whatever you put out there. Depending on time, we might go into more depth about social media. And I know that some people have an approach that says no social media ever. I also know some people use it. So we're going to kind of cater to both of those approaches. Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable saying something, don't. And if someone doesn't feel comfortable saying information, don't pressure them to. This is allowing people to have privacy and understanding that just because you're involved with something doesn't mean you get to know everything all of the time, if it's for your own safety and the safety of others. And yeah, so how do you go about establishing security culture? Because if you want to have a large protest and many people show up, you can't really be secret about it, or not many people will. But if someone is engaged in illegal activities, you don't want to tell everyone, because then when the police start looking to charge people, it'll get back to you. So it's good to have different levels of security and kind of having a means of establishing this. I arbitrarily came up with 7 that we're going to go through, but this can be catered to fit your situation. But it is important in every situation to say, okay, what level of security, what level of danger is this? And therefore, what level of security do we need? So, for example, well, yeah, not every situation needs the heavy security. You have to think about the goals and the consequences and find the balance between the two. And we'll start with some examples. So if you think about the Earth Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, they did major acts of property destruction, were charged with felonies, faced decades of jail time. And their approach to security around it was often only those who are directly involved with the action need to know. And so if you're looking at something that will potentially ruin your life, this would probably be, this is a level that people have taken when they've done significantly illegal things. But then you have things that are a step down in risk and a step down of consequences, like spray painting and non-felony acts of property destruction. Maybe someone would want people outside the action to know, in this case, someone they can call if they're in danger, or some other trusted people. A next one would be something like a black bloc or occupation. There still is some illegality there, but at this point, you're kind of leaning towards needing higher numbers and valuing that over secrecy. And in this, you could think about it as something where you can invite people that you trust enough. People outside of the group planning the action might know, but they're still expected to keep it a secret. often we see this in signal loops where it's like, here's a GoFundMe for this person facing things. Don't share on social media, give to trusted sources. So that would be a level of security culture decided upon for something specific. The next one up, you could think about, a group doesn't set a strict list of who's invited. You're free to invite people, but you still try to keep it small. And different levels of protests would fall into this. This 4 and 5 are kind of the same, but rumors of the action can spread far and wide, but you don't know who's organizing it. So maybe it is a flash mob style protests where you want people to show up and know it's going to happen, but the people organizing it could still face some consequences. So we just circulate that it's happening, but you don't know who. Next level would be you announce an action openly, but you're still not broadcasting it in the newspaper. You kind of see this for critical mass bike rides where, I don't know, it was like every Friday you'd show up and the bikes would take the roads in town. It was a known thing, but it wasn't fully known, unlike 7, where the action's totally announced. You want as many people to come to, you're reaching out to the media, maybe you're even getting a permit. This could be like a march or a candlelight vigil. And the purpose of these events would be to help shape the narrative of something to get as many people participating as possible. So these aren't strict categories. These are kind of things that I came up with for this presentation. And when people are planning their own actions, this is a discussion that should be held very early on, because it then sets up what happens after. You know if you're going to invite more people, you know if you're going to promote it. So this is something to consider with that trusted group when planning. So some examples of security culture and practice in relation to events, meetings, relationships, and technology. We'll go through these one at a time. How am I doing on time? Oh, we are just flying through. Great. So vouching. I see in groups that there's a vouch system where, say, there's a signal loop and you say, can I ask so-and-so to join? And people within the group have to then vouch for that person. And usually it's a 24-hour period or a certain amount of vouches before someone is allowed to join, allowed to participate. And there's a tendency to be very lackadaisical about this, where people will say, oh, I met this person once, they're cool. Oh, I crashed on their couch once, that's cool. That vouching might be acceptable for a very public event or a public protest, but if the purpose of the group is to do things that would get people into trouble, then you're going to have to think about what that vouch and what letting new people in actually means. So when you're vouching for someone, you're supposed to ask yourself, have you worked with this person before? To what extent have you worked with them? Do you trust them? And does the person that you're vouching for understand and practice security culture? They could be the most rad, down-to-earth person willing to throw down and help out anyway, but they could run their mouth. And in that case, you might not want to vouch for them. So the reason that we do vouching is because you might not know anyone, or you might not know everyone. Your circle can be small, but if everybody knows someone well and can vouch for someone, then there's a level of trust and there's a level of safety there. So I see some questions. I'm going to take a quick break to look at those. Oh, cool. So there's some great questions that we will get to when they pertain more to the matter at hand. Let's see. So meeting spaces. This was written pre-COVID times and can somewhat be adjusted, but when meeting for the types of plannings where people could go to jail as a result, you want to avoid places that can be overheard, avoid spaces that can be monitored. If someone is under investigation by the police, or they're just curious about someone, they could be following their actions. Watch them go to a cafe where they meet other people. Now they have more people of interest to follow, track, and learn about. Leave your phone in the car, or better yet, at home. I still remember the days where people would take out the batteries of their phone. I don't think that's possible anymore. The microwave is a safe place if you're actually worried it's listening to you, but it's better just to not bring it, because if it's in your car, it's being tracked and it'll see you go there. Also, parks and public places are generally better than people's houses. There doesn't become this network of known organizers that way. Laying low. So people sometimes adopt different roles. There's an importance for certain organizers to be very public, a public face. But if people are doing more illegal actions, it's sometimes better to not be involved in the public face of a movement. When investigations begin, it starts with the faces seen around, the people on the mailing list, those well-known actors. So people planning to do things that could land them in jail would be better off not being seen as involved with the movements. Also, don't leave a trail. Credit card use, gas cards, cell phone calls, all leave a records of your motions, purchases, and contacts. The faction of the Earth Liberation Front that was committing arsons in the Pacific Northwest in the late 90s, early 2000s, all purchases were made with cash. This was before cell phones were really a thing. The incendiary devices were assembled not at anyone's houses. So in many ways, they were taking steps that, and they also didn't often or stopped associating with the mainstream above ground Earth first movements. So there's something to be learned from that, and they made their own mistakes, but yeah. And this laying low can extend to social media. If you're politically active, make your profiles private. I'm actually just going to say make your profiles private in general, unless you've got like an art account where you need that to be visible to bring people in. There's not really a reason for your face, everyone you know, your thoughts to be visible to everyone. Verify each of your followers. And I don't mean look at their picture and name and say, oh, cool, I know this person, accept. There was an incident in the past couple years where someone who didn't have an, I believe, Instagram profile had a fake account made. Someone was doxxed, Nazis got their information, made a fake profile for someone, started friending other people in the movement. People said, oh, I recognize this person, added them, and now a Nazi had infiltrated their network. So if your profile is private, that's a good first step, but also each person you accept, maybe just text them and say, hey, is this you? I didn't think you were the Instagram type, or head them up in person, be like, this you? Cool, accept. Never post about anything illegal online, anywhere. Just never talk about anything illegal, even as a joke. A good way that I heard it is never say anything you wouldn't want read back to you in the court of law. So if you said, ha ha ha, I'm going to burn down the Biltmore, and then there was an electrical fire the next week, well, that's on your Twitter and the police might use that to implicate you. Um, and assume all electronic communications are public because yes, they are. More questions about encryption. Cool. So a large part of this presentation is going to focus on the digital aspects of security culture now. Yeah, so electronic security culture. Assume everything that you do online on your phone involving any electronic device is tracked. Assume every electronic communication will be read. I know people these days place a lot of faith in Signal. That's cool. Signal is a very good tool for some reasons, but, and we'll get into this later, you shouldn't assume that it's safe. You shouldn't assume that any way of encrypted communication is safe, because you're trusting everybody on that signal loop that has been vouched for. You know, maybe the vouch system's not good. You're trusting that everyone in that signal loop is going to lock their phone, is going to not lose their phone. Trusting everyone in that signal loop's not a cop screenshotting everything. Also, while Signal's encryption is great and our current technology cannot break it, with the rate that technology is accelerating, it probably could be someday. And you should assume that all encrypted communications are being collected and stored for a time when they can be decrypted. So encryption. We're going to spend different time on this at different places, but encryption is your friend. Encrypt your devices. Use encrypted forms of communication. And I want to distinguish between passwords and encryption because they're actually not the same thing. Passwords are like a lock. So if you have your front door locked, well, most people are going to try it, not get in. It could be a locksmith who's good, can break in. Also, your back window might be open, so I'm not going to try picking your lock. I'm just going to walk around back. Encryption's different. You can think of it like casting a spell. So instead of locking the door to your house, you're casting a spell on your house. So now when someone goes to your house to break in, it's no longer a house, but maybe a tree. But encryption isn't entirely safe because if someone knows the encryption key, they can still get in. And just, how do I go back? Back. Just for an example, when I was preparing for this presentation, I had an old version of this presentation on an old computer. That computer was encrypted and I knew the encryption key, but I forgot the password. So with 5-10 minutes of Googling, I was able to figure out how to break into my own computer, changing the password of the root user of a Linux system. I don't know much about technology, but that's like 10 minutes of Googling. So you can assume that all legal authorities will have someone on hand who can break into devices that aren't encrypted. So with your phone, you probably have a way of encrypting. iPhones do, what is it? iPhones, the entire thing is encrypted, whereas Androids encrypt the data. So by default, iPhones are safer than Androids for that reason, because the entire device is encrypted, whereas with Androids, the data being stored is encrypted, but not the device itself. But when setting a password or encryption, it's better to just have a bunch of words than random shit, symbols and shit. You can look at this with an iPhone. If you've got a 6-digit, if you've got 4-digit iPhone, there's 10,000 possibilities. If you've got a 6-digit PIN, there's a million. And that's because the length of it will make it increase exponentially. I know a lot of people like to use weird characters or leet speak to make their passwords harder, but it doesn't really do much. So kind of the best way for passwords or encryption keys is to select 4 to 6 unrelated words. It becomes longer. It's also easier to remember than leet speak. When encrypting your phone and computer, do not use biometrics. Cops will use your fingerprints to unlock your phone. They'll hold your phone up to your face to unlock it while you're cuffed behind your back. So don't ever do that. I know it's easier, don't. We'll get more into encryption and the technology section, but back with general security stuff, assessing risks. When planning an action, ask yourself if you're comfortable facing the worst case scenario repercussions. And if the answer is no, that's totally cool. There should be space within movements for someone who has a kid who can't go to jail at that protest because their kid will get taken away. There should be space at protests for people who wants to throw down hard and accelerate it. Both of those are fine, but you need to know where you are, because if you decide you're going to be an accelerate person when really you're a person who doesn't want to get arrested, getting arrested is going to put yourself in a situation where you're facing problems that you haven't planned for, and it makes you more of a risk. Let's say someone doesn't want to have a record. They throw down at a protest, they get arrested. The cops say, hey, we'll let you off if you let us know who planned this. Maybe that need for themselves to not get arrested will outweigh their loyalty to the community, and they could put others at risk. But if they decided beforehand, I don't want to get arrested, then they know how to behave in a way that would prevent that from happening. Also, clearly communicate to everyone involved the risk you're asking them to take. If you're asking people to show up and lock themselves to a bank door to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline, they need to know that that's an arrestable risk. You can't say, oh, it'll be fine. And know and respect the limits of others. If you want to throw down and other people don't push them on, because then you're asking them to take on more than they've bargained for. Questions. Security and consent. Don't imperil others with your choices. If the event's being organized by a group that would face worse repercussions than you legally, don't escalate it. Maybe there's an immigrants' rights march. Don't be the white person showing up, trying to turn that march up, unless that's what they ask for. Avoid gossip. Talking about what other people are doing, saying, thinking will get them into trouble, and will probably get you investigated too. But not everyone knows good security culture, and that's why we're having these presentations. Is when you're brand new to a movement, you're not gonna know what's good, what's bad. You're going to want to be involved. You're going to want to know everything. So when someone shows up and someone fucks up, that's okay to an extent. We need to provide space and provide empathy to work with them through that. You need to kind of communicate, hey, it's not you. This is why we're doing this. We're trying to keep you safe. We're trying to keep everyone safe. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it could be a bad actor. Sometimes it could just be someone who has trouble conforming to security culture. And in those times, you might need to start excluding people, but always give people the chance to work through with them and build the trust and build the security culture. So let's see, pausing for questions. There's a lot of good stuff about encryption we'll get to when we get to in more detail, but one thing I want to talk about is cameras. Cameras are everywhere. There is a great app on your phone called, I'll put it here, Where Are the Eyes? It's not up to date, but it shows you the location of CCTV cameras around town. You can mark them yourselves. Just open this up, walk around Asheville, add cameras. You'll have a great understanding just how heavily you're being filmed at all times. I think one of the biggest changes I've seen in the past 5-10 years are services like Amazon Ring, where now nearly everyone has a camera on their door that's not just recording their door and doorstep, but people walking down the street. So the police will have access to Amazon Ring often. Those people will have neighborhood group Facebook accounts where they share their Amazon Ring footage. So now your movement through your neighborhood can be tracked just by walking down the street and everyone's cameras looking at you. We've also got great horrible things like facial recognition, which can analyze the bridge of your nose. So if your mask fits real tight, they could probably pick you out from that. License plate readers on traffic lights, so you can be monitored as you drive through the town. And gait recognition, that is picking people out by the distinctive way that they walk, which throw a rock in your shoe, maybe that might make you walk different. I don't know. Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, but cops like to film people at protests, not even protests that are rowdy, just the general everyday show up at Pack Square with some signs. They're going to be there filming people. They want to build a database of people and identities that they see at protests that they can tie to real people, so that when things happen in town, they have an easy list of people to pin on, because they say, well, these identities are involved, therefore they're to blame. And this isn't just your face and clothing, but your accessories and demeanor. So things like your shoes, your bags, how you act at protest. If you're the person that escalates shit, they're going to know you as that person who escalates shit. And all of this is technically public, so all of this is done without a warrant. Check the chat. Ooh, so someone asked, what are some ways to ensure safety in home cameras? Or not especially by setting boundaries and consent, and not putting cameras or mics in children's rooms. That's a real tricky question, because cameras and microphones in people's houses are very easy to break into. They often have just the default factory settings and users. There's web pages on the internet where you can look up lists of every open device at the current moment, and you could people have hacked into cameras inside houses, recorded their children, and used that for not ransom. Is ransom the right word? But they've said, like, if you don't pay this much Bitcoin, we will leak this. It's also totally possible to hack a fridge, a toaster, a light bulb, the heat in someone's house, because all of this is public. And the more things that are connected to the internet, the more things are going to get hacked. So as far as if people have a need for cameras in their house, around their house, the first step would be asking if it's necessary for that camera to be connected to the internet. If not, that's a way around it. If it is, then have someone with tech skills go over it and make sure it's safe and that no one's going to break into it for malicious purposes. Another person asked, are all the security camera feeds available to the police? It's a good question. So if a business or a home has a security feed and they don't want it to give it to the police will need to provide a warrant. Often businesses will say, sure, you can have it. And Amazon does things where they go work with police departments to sell Ring to certain neighborhoods where there's a discount applied, and people choose to share it with the police to get access to that. So let's click answer live when I've answered shit. Cool. So an example of how someone was charged with felonies because of pictures taken at a protest. This happened, I believe, in Philadelphia during the uprisings in 2020. There were pictures of someone with incendiary devices by a police car. And what they did was they looked on Instagram, found people who were by police cars with incendiary devices. Someone had a shirt that read, "Keep the immigrants, deport the racist." This was a small batch shirt made by an Etsy artist. The police found that artist on Etsy and read reviews. They looked at everyone who read a review, found their public profiles, and from those public profiles of people who reviewed this t-shirt, went out searching elsewhere on the internet. They found the LinkedIn of a masseuse who in one of their massage videos had a similar tattoo. And with this information, they were able to obtain a warrant from Etsy about everyone who bought the shirt. They saw that this person with a similar tattoo had bought the shirt and used that to charge the person with arson. So, yeah, I think one good thing about the plague is we're all able to and to encouraged to cover our faces in public. But sometimes we forget that our faces aren't the only things that identify us. It could be our tattoos, our shoes, our hats, our hair. And even if we're wearing all black, maybe it's that punk patch, maybe it's that hole we stitched up in that specific way. Those details can still be used. And like I said, it wasn't until they got all this information that they were able to attain a warrant. The rest was all just looking shit up on the internet that was public. So back to encryption in detail. I'm gonna pause here to see if there's any questions related to not encryption. Cool. So encryption. Encryption changes what the data is. So here we've got explore Asheville. I threw this through a Caesar cipher and it's now encrypted to this phrase. What I essentially did was I shifted every letter in the alphabet over 5 spaces. This is easy as fuck to break. You can see that E being the most commonly used letter in English must mean H, difference between E and H. I shifted it over, I broke the encryption. Here below is an example, yeah, so Caesar cipher is not used as encryption today. Below is an example of the SHA-256 encryption algorithm. It's what's used to encrypt your password on a website, generally, if they know what they're doing. And what you see is Explore Asheville becomes something unrecognizable, and there's no way of changing this phrase back to Explore Asheville. So that's kind of what encryption is and how it functions differently than a password. It's a form of changing things, not just a form of hiding or locking things. And so there's kind of 2 ways that we look at encryption. One is data at rest. That's your computer, your phone, hard drives, USBs. And the other way that we talk about encryption is data in transit. That's emails you send, phone calls you make, text messages. There are some similarities and differences worth looking into. So data at rest. We've got full disk encryption. That means everything from the operating system, Windows, iOS, to each individual file is encrypted. You're unable to see or access anything without that encryption key. This is the safest. If you have to ask, is my device encrypted? The answer is probably no. When you set up a new computer from the start, you would have to encrypt the full disk then. Otherwise, you're not going to have full disk encryption. There's also device encryption. So if you have a USB or an external drive, you can encrypt that. You can store things on there, and there would be no way of accessing the data or breaking into it without the encryption key. So if your computer's not encrypted and you don't want to start your computer over fresh, you can always just have an encrypted USB or external drive for storing useful things like your banking information that you wouldn't want anyone to get. File encryption is kind of the next level down from safety. It keeps the specific file safe, but people can still see the file name and file type. So if you have your bank statements and you save them as encrypted, well, people can see it's the September bank statement. They can see it's a PDF. They just can't see what it is. This would be the same for video or audio recordings. They could see the name, what it is, but they couldn't access it without a key. So yeah, more about full disk encryption. Some operating systems have it enabled by default. When you get a new Mac, it encourages you to use it. When you set up a Linux system, you can choose to. I don't know the option for Windows, so if someone wants to share that, that would be cool. But also Windows is not safe. It's the least safe of the three, but nothing's safe. So some disk systems still store unencrypted plain text on RAM, even when you're using full disk encryption. So this is something where your computer's got two brains. It's got the brain that remembers everything, and it's got the brain that's actively working. It stores it in the brain that's actively working, which means if you don't shut down your computer fast enough and someone grabs it, they could have access to that information. The other encryption that we talk about is data in transit, and some people have raised some good questions to these that I'll hopefully answer, and then I'll look at the questions and make sure after. And there are two types of encryption: transport layer encryption, end-to-end encryption. Transport layer encryption are things like HTTPS and VPNs, or virtual private networks. So HTTPS is basically secure web browsing. It means what you do on the site is encrypted. Back in the day, this used to be banks, financial sites. Now Google enforces in their browser, and most browsers enforce that every site needs transport layer encryption. So if you use a credit card on the web, you're trusting this, but it's not actually safe. It's safe from someone taking your credit card information, but it's not safe from anything else. People can still see what web page you're on. So say you're on, I don't know, like Arrowhead, and the way that that works, it would have the name of the page and the URL, so they could see you're on the how to make DMT on Arrowhead. Now, they don't know what you're doing on that web page because it's got HTTPS, but they know you've accessed that web page. And here, by someone, I mean your internet service provider, Charter, the police who have obtained a warrant to ask Charter for those records that they are keeping. So HTTPS, while safe for buying things online, is not safe for other purposes, which is why we have VPNs, which means a virtual private network. It takes a tunnel from your computer to another computer, and it pops out there. So your internet service provider, Charter, can't see what you're doing, but they can see that you're going to this network that's using a VPN. This doesn't exactly solve the issue, because now you're trusting that VPN to not monitor or turn over your data. Some VPNs don't log anything. Some keep only the necessary logs. Some log everything. So you have to ask yourself, do you trust the app or the service that you're using to not log or not turn over logs? Do you trust its technical infrastructure? Do the developers actually know what they're doing, or could you get in trouble? Also, it's policies to protect against law enforcement requests. So with the questions, yeah. Someone asked, what are your thoughts about using a VPN? Do it. I would like to use a VPN, but I cannot really afford to pay for one. I know that Rise Up used to have a free VPN. I believe it's still free or donation based. So that might be something to look into. So yeah, what are some good VPNs? I have heard good things about Rise Up. I have heard good things about NordVPN. I'm gonna throw these in the chat. So up and I can't guarantee that these are good. You're gonna have to do a bit of your own research, but those are good places to start. Also, just like ask your friends. Someone's probably using a VPN. So we've talked about encryption in transit when it's at the transport layer, meaning accessing websites, but there's also a layer underneath and a layer of extra safety, end-to-end encryption. Basically, you have a public key and a private key. You use a public key to encrypt the message, and then no one can read it unless they have the private key to decrypt it. Which is really good because it's not like the Caesar cipher we saw where you could just shift it back and forth. Once you have something encrypted, there's only a certain way to unencrypt it. So we'll get a little more to end-to-end encryption when we talk about emails and Signal. But for now, let's get on to phones. And with phones, yeah, a couple different things to talk about. Location tracking. Police have used cell phone location records to obtain convictions. They can get a warrant for all devices at a given location at a given time. Summer 2019, they were getting up to 180 requests a week. So what they do is a window gets broken. The police say, hey, Google, hey, Apple, hey, internet service provider, or Verizon, give me all the phones that passed by this store between 5 p.m. and 12 a.m. And the police will give them all the phones that are just anonymized. They say, all right, here are all the phones that tracked. Police look into it and say, well, okay, we saw these phones head in this direction. Let's get more information about that because, well, we've seen these people at protest. We know they live in this neighborhood. So give me every phone that passed by this store at this time and later went to this neighborhood. Now the police have enough information to go to Verizon, Google, whomever, and say, okay, now give us the names of these people who own the phones. And they have used this to obtain convictions. Nothing but your phone was here within these hours. Legality is a little all over the place. Right now in North Carolina, no warrant is required for this. Other states offer some. So for example, Illinois and Indiana will say a warrant's required for real-time tracking of people's locations. But let's see. Yeah. So North Carolina, they can track where you are without a warrant. How do they do it? Well, there are a couple ways: triangulation, cell site simulators, Wi-Fi, and location services. Your location is tracked by the Wi-Fi spots you go through within 10 meters if you've got your GPS on. So if you're used to using Google Maps, it's just tracking your location within 10 meters to get you there. But if you don't use Google Maps or location services, it's still tracked within 200 meters. Well, how does it do that? Triangulation. That means it looks at the 2-3 towers around you and says, well, you're this distance from this tower, this distance from this, and this distance. You must be somewhere here in the middle. Unless your phone's in airplane mode, you can be tracked within, I think I said 200, but 150. Technology is getting better. Cell site simulators. This is a thing at larger protests, not sure how common it has been in Asheville, but it's a portable fake cell phone tower that uh, intercept everything that's happening on a cell phone. So we see these people using cell phones at a protest. It's actually getting picked up by the police first and then relayed to a tower. And if you're not using encrypted communication like Signal, they're seeing all of it. If you are using encrypted communication like Signal, they're still seeing the metadata. And yeah, Wi-Fi. If you've got Wi-Fi on your phone, every network that you walk through, the Starbucks, Wells Fargo, on the way down to Pack Square, they're picking up those hotspots and saying, oh, I'm here at this time. I'm here at this time. So keeping Wi-Fi off is another good way of going about things. Is your phone actually listening to you and recording? Not really, but the thing is, like, people talk about, oh, I was just talking about this and then I saw an ad for it on my Instagram. This is actually just the social media building a profile of who you are as a person based on the pages you follow, your friends, who they follow, who they like. So someone within your sphere liked an ad or bought a product, and then they started advertising outwards. So it's not actually them listening to you, it's you telling them everything about your life so that they don't have to. So yeah, more about Signal. It encrypts the communication itself, but not the metadata. It relies on everyone using it responsibly. It relies on people using Signal, not recording things. It relies on people verifying their safety numbers, so there's not a man in the middle attack where someone pretends to be you. So another form of vouching that we see in groups is having someone leave a voicemail where you hear their voice and people can say, oh, that sounds like so-and-so. The pros of Signal, it's great encryption, a bunch of jargon from their site. There are some cons. It requires a cell phone number. It does not provide anonymity preservation. Requires servers for relaying information. So when you're making a call or text with Signal or any provider, it's not going from your phone to their phone. It's going from your phone to a server to their phone. So this server can provide a point of weakness for getting the public keys if it's eventually broken into. It's also this lovely word metadata. Who's talking to whom and when is still available to Apple, Google, Verizon, whoever. So yeah, metadata is data about data. It's not the communication itself. It's not the text, but it's saying this person texted this person at this time. It's not generally legally protected. It's considered public information. It's obtainable without a warrant. And there's this wonderful quote saying, we kill people based on metadata, by the former director of the CIA, NSA, when talking about the wars in the Middle East. A lot of the drone attacks, who was decided to be killed was, well, this person called this person, therefore they're a terrorist, and we can blow them up. Burner phones. So sometimes people will get phones specifically because they don't want to be tracked, but you have to ask yourself how hard it is to find a paper trail. Did you buy this phone with cash or a credit card that they can find? Is it tied to an email to buy the phone or a backup phone number? Did you go into the store where they saw somebody purchase it with cash, and was that done on video? Also, if you've got a SIM card on your non-burner phone or a previously exposed burner phone, and you move it into another new burner phone, the network will register that. They also do this wonderful thing called location analysis, where they decide a device belongs to the same person because they see these two phones are always hanging out. Another way this happens is if your phone just sits still for 8 or so hours, Google, Apple, whoever says, oh, this must be the person's house because they're sleeping during this time. Or if you've ever had the experience where you get into your car at the same time every day that you run errands, and Google Maps is like, oh, are you going to Trader Joe's? You would. Meant to have a laugh track accessible, but whatever. Let's look at questions. Ooh, so somebody asked, what about typing and erasing what you typed without sending it? Do you know if they keep records of that? Should you wait to type before you know what you want to say? Signal would not have access to that. Signal doesn't have access to a message until it's actually sent. One worry might be is if that phone were previously compromised or computer were compromised with a keylogger, then that could be a problem. Someone asked, how can one be sure that any VPN is safe and not being run by someone trying to get info? The answer is you can't. It kind of sucks, and you're putting your trust in something that has previously worked for people. Maybe you find a VPN in a country outside the US, maybe one that doesn't share information with the US. Maybe you find one run by activists and you know someone who verified the source code or knows the developer. And that's actually about as safe as you can ever get with anything electronic. We're all using Signal. I don't know anyone who's actually verified the source code. I don't actually know enough about how encryption works to say that the encryption does work, and I put that trust in it. So I think that when we talk about cost benefit analysis and risk analysis, that's something that you have to think is that unless you've got a mathematics degree and a computer science degree and you can understand signals encryption, you're going to have to trust someone who trusts it. And up until recently, there was an anarchist working on Signal. There haven't been important changes made to Signal since then. So I don't know if that means something. So we got a question about, let's see. Oh yeah, just about like encrypted communication in general. So one form of encrypted communication is Signal, but there's also emails. Emails aren't encrypted. RiseUp and Proton Mail do not send encrypted emails. The emails that you receive are not encrypted. They are only encrypted when they're stored on the computer. So you can kind of think about sending an email as sending a postcard to someone. They can see the IP, where it was sent from, and the times that it was sent. But when you use something like RiseUp or Proton Mail, after traveling as a postcard, it'll get stored in a safe way, at least. If you want actually encrypted emails and communication, you'll have to use a tool called PGP, Pretty Good Encryption, or PEP, Pretty Easy Encryption. I don't have time to go to the details of this, but check out the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They've got guides for setting this up. It's a little more intensive too. You can't just go to the web browser and access it. It has to arrive to an email provider on your computer. You have to enter the key to decrypt it. But a lot of journalists will use this when they're in countries worried about regime crackdown. So if you're wanting to send encrypted communications in a way that's not Signal and a little more hands-on, looking into pretty good encryption on the Electronic Frontier Foundation website, it's a great place to start. RiseUp has turned over information to the feds before. It was, I believe, some botnet stuff. It wasn't activist related, so they said, well, we're going to do it because we don't want to stop existing. This was before they encrypted data. Now everything should be encrypted, and they hopefully not be able to do this, but if you can access it in a web browser, it can still be decrypted easily. Yeah, and we did talk about VPNs. It's a little more about VPNs because we're going to look at it in contrast to Tor. When you're on the internet through a VPN, it looks like your computer's just disappearing into a wormhole somewhere else. Someone's popping out of the wormhole and doing things on the internet. So as long as the VPN doesn't turn things over, you're good. There's also another tool called Tor, the onion router, which wraps the communication in different layers of encryption and passes it on. Each layer opens it up and sends it to the next layer. So what you can see is that Alice is wanting to talk to Bob. Well, she goes to one computer. The computer doesn't know Bob, but says, oh, I'll send you next. Next computer only knows it came from here. It doesn't know Alice or Bob, and it sends it to the next computer. So Tor is a great way of anonymizing the way you behave on the internet that doesn't rely on a company. Using a VPN would rely on a company that you're putting trust in. Tor, you're putting trust in the technology. But Tor isn't fully safe either, because if you're going to a website that's not encrypted, someone can see what you're doing. There's also browser sniffing. So someone could be looking at your computer and be looking at Arrowhead at the same time. Now, they can't see your computer going to Arrowhead, but they can see your computer acting on the internet, and they can see someone accessing the internet on Arrowhead, and they can say, oh, well, these two things happened at the same time. We're going to say it's this. It doesn't hide that you're using Tor. Your internet service provider will see that you're using Tor, but that's it. The site doesn't know who's accessing it, but it knows someone's accessing it from Tor. People have been caught with using Tor before. A Harvard student made a bomb threat, won it out of an exam, so used encrypted mail, used Tor, had some good security practices, but when they looked at the Harvard network, they said, oh, well, 3 people were using Tor when this email was received. Let's go ask them what was up. And that student confessed. Also, there was a hacker who was using Tor to log in to their chat. One time just logged into the chat not using Tor, and the FBI was able to see, oh, well, this person logged into the chat, which is also a Tor chat, must be the same person. So let's get back to some questions. So someone brought up, at least in the US, the Earn It Act threatens encryption and internet privacy. Is this a threat to signal, etc.? And how can we address these concerns? Yes, it's a threat to signal. It's a threat to any form of stored encryption online and any form of encrypted communication. What the Earn It Act essentially does is say, if the government suspects that, I think they throw it under the umbrella of, or use the fucking wooden Trojan horse of like child sex trafficking, and say, if they suspect this service is being used for child sex trafficking, they have to prove that they're not, or else they can be liable to the legal ramifications of it happening using on their network. So what this means by proving that they're not is adding a backdoor for the encryption, allowing a way for investigators to look through everything that is encrypted, decrypt it, and decide whether or not it is legal. As for what you can do, honestly, I'm going to sound like a liberal, but I mentioned in the chat, I'll just throw it here. So Electronic Frontier Foundation, they are your friends. They will help you out. They've got a, what are those things that you sign and you send to your governor or whatever? They've got one of those things. Yeah, and I don't know, at this point, we kind of just have to ask the government nicely not to do it because encryption will be fucked. It's actually in the best interest of businesses to fight this too. And I think that's good. And I think that's going to help is that Amazon Web Services, which provides a lot of the internet, is going to get fucked if this passes. So at least we have Amazon and Daddy Bezos on our side. I don't know. But yeah, what can you do about it? Fucking nothing but like dumb shit like vote and sign petitions. But check out the Electronic Frontier Foundation and what they have to say about that. What else do we have? Got some general stuff about security culture. Ooh, flip phone advantages. You look cool. It's much easier to do a burner. You don't get into the temptation of using social networks and all those tracking devices. Are there safer ways to dispose of electronic information that may contain information that can compromise people? So guess what? Apple Cloud is not encrypted. For you to be able to reset your password on something means it's free. They can break into it. The government can just use that way of resetting the password to get into it. But if your device is not synced to the cloud and only on your phone and you want to make sure it's safe, put it in the microwave and turn it on, take a hammer to it, run a magnet over it, physically destroy it. And that's going to be the way to, get rid of data on a device. What about two-factor authentication? I think two-factor authentication is great and important in many ways. That's when you use an email to sign in and your bank's like, oh, we don't know who you are on this computer. Let's send you a text just to make sure it's you. That's very important. Every account that you have, you should have two-factor authentication on if you want that account tied to you, which will be for social media in case you get doxxed, in case you get hacked, which will be for banks and probably most of your emails. If you don't want it tied to you, you could try to set it up through secondary email or something like that. I'm going to go through some fun facts and then get the rest of these questions. This is a very long presentation. We probably won't do all of it, but yeah, fun facts. There's a thing called Operation Choke Point. If you're in an industry the government doesn't like, they can pressure banks and PayPal to shut you down. This has kind of been happening a lot with sex workers recently. Fun facts. Recent judge ruling, you have no objective reasonable expectation of privacy when using your home computer. So this is fucked because this just means anything that you are doing online is like using a public service. Therefore, you are in public when behaving online. Therefore, you don't need a warrant because there's not a reasonable expectation of privacy. Google and Facebook have government services that turn all your data into evidence. There are, if you know a little bit about how to draft a URL the right way, you can do facebook.com ? And then start adding different queries. It says like white 30s Asheville, and that'll bring these people up. That's all public, just not well documented. But then inside they have their government services where that's just available to access, maybe warrant free because it's public and on the internet. They also just have FBI and CIA in their office. And I think that after January 6th, there's been a lot more government focus into social media. The state and also big tech companies map lookalike audiences. So the state would have interest in this as a community of resistance with a lookalike audience. Who follows Hellbender on Instagram or Twitter? All right, who do those people follow? Who are their friends? And it starts to build a circle of, well, these might just be the activist profiles that we need to keep an eye on. They could be private. If they're public, let's get everything off we can. If they're private, let's see what the company will give us. Facebook or Meta, Instagram, it's all the same. Sell these custom audiences. And this is when I was talking earlier about how you think your phone's listening to you because it just advertised something that you're talking about. Well, it's not listening to you, it just knows you that well. Facebook has done studies like, can we make our users depressed by changing their feeds in this way? And did, just for funsies. Yeah. So there's a whole nother section on doxing and how to prevent that from happening that we unfortunately don't have time to get into tonight, but it will be part of the zine and resources that do get shared. So I'm just going to go through the last couple Q&A. If you've got any more, you can add them. If you've got some jokes, I might read them if they're funny. So an anonymous attendee says, how to better train new folks to err on the side of silence. They may not be naturally more talkative than the average person, but they're coming from a pretty clean, open background, transitioning to being open, cautious, discerning. So I think this just is giving them resources like this, where you say, hey, this is why we don't talk about things. Maybe examples of how people talking about things got caught. I described a cell of the ELF earlier where they had great security culture. And one of them ended up being suspected, tracked, caught down because of his struggle with addiction. And he was used as an informant to then go meet up with the people he had been in the cell with years before, and just be like, hey, remember when we did that thing with pal? That was a blast. And by talking about it with someone they had previously trusted and worked with, all that was mic'd, and that led to their arrest. So I think just finding examples of how talking has gotten people fucked and being like, look, I want to keep you safe. You want to keep me safe. This is how we do it. I know it's weird. I know it's strange. I wish it could be better, but this is from decades of work and heartbreak. Oops, someone had to hop off early and ask for reference materials. Well, those will be in the zine. And another anonymous attendee said, there's a saying created by anarchists facing repression over 100 years ago. If you can just think something, don't say it. If you can just say something, don't write it. If you can just write something, don't type it. I think that's great. We don't have to post everything that we're thinking. We don't have to send that message to people in a way that's permanently documented. But maybe we want to say it. Maybe we don't even need to say it. Maybe we can just think about it and have that nice common understanding. Is LibreOffice a good alternative from MS Office programs to send out encrypted docs? Good question. I wouldn't use Microsoft for anything or trust Microsoft for anything. I barely trust Apple for anything. And LibreOffice, being open source, has a certain degree of my trust. Is it good for sending out encrypted docs? I think it would depend on the safety of your computer, but I can't give a definitive yes on that. Where can we get zines? Hopefully carried from Firestorm. I'm gonna work with people to get this in written form. Does keeping your burner off at your residence protect you from location analysis, or should it be at a secondary location? Depends on when you turn off your burner. If it's when you're walking in your front door, no. If it's turning it off at Firestorm and then driving the 15 miles to your house, I could see that helping, but there's been many cases where one fuck up has led to someone's downfall. Are there any safer video chat services than Zoom? I know there's Jitsi that I've used. I can't verify if that's encrypted. Most tech questions you can just ask the internet. I'd say Google it, but I mean search in DuckDuckGo, not Google. I know we're not talking about doxing tonight, Francis, but I was doxed recently to a big following. I'm sorry, and been having a difficult time feeling safe. Anything specific you recommend to make a priority? I think getting as much information as you can off the internet about yourself. If you want, you can reach out to Firestorm. I will have them forward contact to me, and I can put down some things for you. What happens with disappearing messages? Ooh, I actually don't know, so I'm not going to pretend and make something up. Yeah. My assumption is that because when you send a message from, so actually I said I don't know, and I'm not going to make something up, but I'm going to spitball. Don't believe what I'm saying. But what might happen is, we talked about it goes from phone to server to phone. It's still on this server here, so the message might get deleted from that server. But deleting's a weird thing. Usually when you delete a file on your computer, it actually doesn't convert that to ones and zeros or encrypted jibber jabber. What it does is there's a little pointer that says, here's a file name, here's the data. It just gets rid of that. So the data might still exist in a way that someone skilled with computers could access. So yeah, they might get disappeared. They might get deleted from the Signal servers, best case scenario. But when messages are disappearing, you're assuming no one's screenshotting it, no one's phone's been compromised. There's not a stingray that the cops are using to scrape all this encrypted data to store in a database for the days where we can break that encryption. So yeah, let's see. I think that's about it.